What if the reason you're unhappy at your work isn't actually your job? I know that's not always easy to hear, but if you've been fantasizing about quitting, changing careers, moving somewhere new, or blowing up your entire life just to feel better, this episode is for you. Welcome back to the Higher Alignment Podcast. I'm Mintu Lam, Executive Burnout Coach, and I help high performers recover from burnout so they can create success, freedom, and fulfillment without sacrificing themselves in the process. In today's episode, I'm sharing a lesson I learned the hard way during my own burnout journey. We'll talk about why burnout distorts your perspective, how your nervous system influences the thoughts you have, and why making major life decisions from a dysregulated state can lead you further away from what you actually want. By the end of this episode, you'll know how to tell the difference between a job that's truly no longer aligned and a nervous system that's desperately asking for relief. So let's dive in now. So I put a post up on Instagram recently that actually sparked a lot of conversation in my DMs and comments. And it started off by saying, I used to tell people that if you're not happy working somewhere, then just quit. But I actually take that back because if you solely blame your job for the reason you're not happy, then that's just a way to avoid what you're not happy with inside. And I stand so wholeheartedly behind this behind this perspective because I was in that same position when I quit my job. And I'm going to share that with you guys, as some of you might know this story, some of you don't. But I have a lot of people actually come to me at that point where they're saying, Mintu, I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, and I'm debating quitting my job, I'm debating moving to another country, I'm debating switching industries altogether, taking a sabbatical. What do I do? And my advice is always to pause before we do that and first heal the burnout, because your perspective when you're burnt out is skewed, okay? And this is not just me giving my opinion. This is science. This is factual, okay? So when you are in a state of dysregulation, whether that's fight or flight or freeze, the nature of your thoughts shift because your thoughts are based around what state your nervous system is in. And I've done a podcast recording about this too. You can go back and find that episode. I don't know what number it is, but maybe we can link it in the show notes. My editor, Carly, can do that. It's the 4 states your nervous system exists in and the thoughts that you have from each state. However, you could go through the same experience in 3 different states and you'll have a different thought process towards each one. Okay. And so for an example, you might get into an argument with a coworker. And when you're in freeze, you go, what's the point of even working with this guy? He doesn't know what he's doing. I'm the one carrying the load all the time. What's the point? I don't think we're ever going to be able to find common ground. I don't know what the point of working with that guy is. Okay? When you're in fight or flight, it goes, I do everything. I take care of everything. He needs to pull up his socks. If he's not going to take care of this, I'm going to have to do everything myself. And there's just too much here. There's too much here. Why is he like this? Why doesn't he just get it together? Why does this happen? That's fight or flight. When you're in regulation or you're in safety, you go, okay, we're missing something here. Is he having a hard time understanding something? Maybe I'm missing something. How do we find a way to get on the same page? How do we find a way to make this work? Okay. See how those are 3 different types of approaches to the same situation, right? And that's purely dependent on what state you're in. So if you don't know what state you're in, again, I'd go back into listen to that, and you can probably just determine by the type of thoughts you have what state you're in. But back to my original point of, people coming to me saying, Mintu, I don't know if I should quit or not. My recommendation is always to let's get you back to baseline. Let's get you into a state of regulation first so we can actually get to the truth of what's going on here. So we can actually see what the truth is of the situation. And then we can have a better idea of, is it the job? Is it you? Is it both? Right? And so relating this back to my own story, when I first thought about quitting my job at Mercedes back in 2018, which is the first time that I burnt out, okay? And I had already been there since 2014, so I had 4 years in the game. I would have been newly into my finance position by about 2 years at that point. And I was working nonstop. okay? Working almost like at that time, my schedule would have been 6 and 4. So I'd work 6 days on, then 4 days on, have a longer weekend. But, you know, lots of hours, high pressure, sales targets, all these things. And so my nervous system was just always in fight or flight. I didn't know anything but fight or flight. Okay. I was sleeping maybe 4 to 5 hours a night, lots of broken sleep. I was throwing up once a week from stress. Okay. And mainly because my body wasn't releasing the stress from my body properly. So the way that showed up was it was constricting my stomach and not allowing me to digest food properly. That shows up in a lot of people through like IBS, like having diarrhea or constipation or just stomach pains. Um, again, wasn't sleeping well. I was irritable. I was snappy. I just wasn't a version of myself that I really enjoyed being, if I'm being honest. And so, but I liked making the money I was making. I loved like the feeling of being accomplished and growing and pushing myself. Like I did like I like to win. I've always been super competitive. Okay. So like I liked those aspects of it. And that was enough to justify why I should just keep going. Right. But again, in 2018, it kind of came to this head where I was like, I actually don't know if I can keep going this way because every morning I wake up with dread and I wake up with this feeling of like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? And it was getting to a point where it's like, I don't think the money's worth it anymore. Like I'm questioning if it's worth it, and like, I don't like feeling this way. I don't like being this version of me. And so at that time, because I was in fight or flight, I blamed the job. I blamed them for, I'd be having emails at all hours of the night. Not all hours of the night, but, like even if I was off, I would still get emails coming in. People calling me and texting me for what they needed. That's both people I worked with, but also clients because I made myself so available. Um, I wasn't eating lunch because I felt like there was so much to do. I would just skip lunch a lot of the time and then finally eat by the time I was hangry, right? Skipping breakfast. Um, at that time, I wasn't doing like barely any physical activity. I was barely dancing anymore. Wasn't doing anything to take care as far as like my physical health. Really, I'd been a dancer all my life, but like I wasn't walking. I wasn't really doing anything like that because I was just gassed every day when I got home. I was just so tired from the day that like I had no energy for any of that stuff just to even take care of myself. I had no energy. Okay, if you're an executive who's craving more clarity, happiness, and a sense of real inner peace in your day to day, make sure you hit follow so you never miss an episode. This show is here to help you lead, succeed, and actually feel good while doing it. And if something resonates today, give it a like and share it with someone else who could use a little bit more calm in their life too. Yeah, I just remember waking up every day feeling like I was just, it was just such a struggle to get through the day. And like, again, I like to win. I'm never going to give up. I'm super competitive, but man, this is not enjoyable. And I felt like I was withering away. I felt like I was losing touch with who I really was and becoming the shell of a person and just feeling really empty. And then I also felt guilty. I also felt guilty because it's like I have this great life from the outside looking in, great income, great condo, great friends, great family, great wardrobe, great car. I got a new car every year. So from the outside looking in, it's like, how could you not be in love with your life? How could you not feel grateful for this? And that made me feel guilty too. And that made me feel a lot of shame too, because it made me feel like something was wrong with me. And so again, blame the job. And that's when I started to think like, do I need to quit? Do I need to leave? And you know what was a saving grace for me at that time is that I was exploring my spirituality and I had been going to meditation circles and sound healings and getting readings. And I actually got my Reiki master practitioner certificate and I can read energies and do all these things. And that was really a saving grace because I had enough awareness to realize that blaming the job solely probably wouldn't solve my problems. Like just picking up and leaving probably wouldn't magically make all this go away. Um so I at least had that nudge. And so what I decided to do was, well, it can't get any worse than what I'm doing now. Like I don't think I can feel any worse than I do right now. So what would happen if I just decided to heal my burnout first? Right? What would happen if I just decided to work on that first and then see where this road takes me? And for me, that was exploring a lot of different things. That was again exploring my spirituality. And then I started to find nervous system work and like, what's this? What's the nervous system? And it was such like I actually find even though nervous system work is very scientific and it's all scientifically proven, physiological, biological, whatever, like, as far as like if you're comparing spirituality and science, that type of thing. Um, Nervous system work to me is extremely spiritual because it's the process of anchoring into the body and teaching the body how to be present, how to have faith, how to love. Like you can't do those things properly, how to feel free unless your nervous system is regulated. You can't properly experience those things. You can't properly bring those spiritual things into your human experience if you're not working with your nervous system. So it was this amazing missing piece that I stumbled onto. And I just started reading a ton of books and going to little workshops here and there and little retreats here and there. And I would pull from all of them to help me make sense of it. Okay. And just to figure out what worked for me. And if I'm being completely honest, it probably took me about 3 years to really get out of my burnout. Okay. So I started in 2018 ish, probably didn't really start to feel better till 2021. Okay. In that process, obviously things started to feel better for me, but that's when I really started to see clearly. And man, did my perspective of life completely change. Like in 2018, I felt like I was in the valley. Like, if you're thinking you're standing in a ditch somewhere and your eyes are at like ground level, it's like you can only see so much from there. You can only see what's on the dirt. You can only see just really what's in front of you. Like you can't see much. But by the time I had got into 2021, I felt like I was on the mountaintop again. And I felt like I could see a clear picture of what my life looked like. Now, before I explain what I did after that, you know, what did that look like as far as healing my burnout? Well, it was a little bit of a combination of both. It was continuing the spiritual things. It was continuing to go to a sound bath here and there, being out in nature as much as I could. I live in Edmonton, Alberta. We are just about 4 hours north or east, depending what set of Rockies you want to go to. But from Banff and Jasper, we have these beautiful mountains around us. I think the first time I had went to the mountains since I was a kid was in like 2018. Like it had been a good decade since I'd went and experienced that mountainous energy. And wow, is that so healing in itself? But again, that just shows how locked down I was in my fight or flight and work and all these things that I wasn't even giving myself the medicine that was, not far from me as far as nature. So spending a ton more time in nature, like that was my go-to. I was doing something, at least one thing a day for my mental, physical, or emotional health. So some days that was having a good cry. Some days that was going for a walk. Some days that was like going to a dance class or a yoga class. Some days that was just a lot of journaling. I just realized that I had become really disconnected from myself and I needed to rebuild that connection again to truly figure out if I wanted to leave my job or not, right? Because again, that's where this all started. I wanted to quit my job in 2018. But like, was that wanting to quit coming from my burnout or was that coming from Mintu in my heart of hearts, knowing this was the right move, And you know, quitting your job isn't a big deal, I think, on the grand universal scale of things. Like people switch jobs all the time, but also it's a big decision for your life in that moment. You're probably not going to change jobs too many times in your life, especially if you're a high achiever. You usually have some longevity some places. So it was a felt like a big decision at that time. Again, I had already been there 4 years and I had created a really, you know, really great setup for myself. I climbed into a management position quickly. I was only one of two females on a whole male, dominated team, which to me is always a competitive advantage to be a female in that space. Like I just had so many great perks. Like I had created a really good role for myself. But again, so in this process of going from the valley to the mountaintop, it was just every day doing one small thing for Mintu. One small thing for Mintu that showed her like, hey, you are more than just your work. You are more than just your productivity. Like there is a person underneath all this that we need to get to know again. There's a little girl inside of this that we need to get to know again. So again, just one thing every day. Sometimes that's 5 minutes, sometimes that's an hour. But the difference was consistency. Before, when I was doing all these retreats and stuff, I was going once a month, once every few weeks, once every 6 months. Like Cool, but the way the nervous system works is it doesn't learn in one-offs. That's like why vacations don't last. Like the high from a vacation is because the relief you're getting from those is very circumstantial-esque, and it's not relief from daily behaviors and daily patterns, okay? One of the biggest struggles for high achievers is they can't tell whether they're burnt out or just overly tired. That's why I created the High Performer Stress Assessment, which will assess exactly what your mind and body are struggling with and what you need to start feeling more balanced, grounded, and happy ASAP. It only takes 2 minutes to complete, and you can find the link in the show notes below. So again, that one thing I was doing for myself every day was creating a new pattern, a new way of relating to myself, a new way of showing up for myself. And I just did that one day at a time, one day at a time. And again, it wasn't perfect. I had days where I did nothing. I had weeks where I did nothing, but I just had to get back on the boat, right? One day at a time, one day at a time. That's why it took me about 3 years, okay? I can take clients through that in 90 days now because I know what I'm doing and I know how to dial it in for people, but it took me about 3 years to really get to that place where that fog lifted off me, okay? So now we get to 2021 and I feel much better myself, but of course we know what 2021 was. That's COVID, right? COVID was really in 2020. But um, what was crazy is I made the most money in my career in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. Those are the highest paying years of my career. Now, was that partially circumstantial because of what was going on in COVID? Like, yeah, but also there were a lot of industries that took a huge hit during that time, and there was a lot of industries that made a lot of money, I mean, that's another rabbit hole I can go down, but my industry was one that did really, really well. But what I'm so grateful for is we were really busy, but I also had the capacity to deal with it now because I had spent the last year rebuilding my capacity, getting my gas tank full again, getting back to Mintu. Once this busy season hit, I could capitalize on it. I could be there fully for it. I could enjoy it. And I ended up staying there till 2023. I ended up staying there 2018 till 2020, 5 more years from when I originally thought I was going to quit. And again, having some of the best years of my career there. Okay. And the reason I think I did that was because instead of quitting, I chose to heal my burnout first. Okay. And again, that fog lifted and I could start to see clearly again. And I not only made more money, I created some of the best relationships. We had some new people come in during those years. And those are some of the best years of my life at the dealership. Now, I did eventually decide to quit. Okay. January 1st, 2022, I was in Jasper with my girlfriend Sarah and my girlfriend Shelby. And we were driving there and I said, I'm quitting my job, guys. And they're like, really? Like, I'd become Mercedes-Benz at this point. Like, shit, you could have stamped that brand on my forehead, on my ass. I'm still loyal to the brand. I won't pretend any other different. I still drive onto that to this day, that store, that brand. I will be loyal. I don't know if I'll ever switch anything. I'm there. It's so incredible. The quality of the brand, everything, the people at that store. Anyways, I had told them I'm going to quit. And they're like, wow, when? I said, I don't know for sure yet, but I know it's time. Right? And again, because I was now in this place of feeling like myself again and having a clear vision of what life looked like, I was able to come to the conclusion that I was only there for money. I was only there for money. And now I was at a point where I realized money can't be the only reason I spend 8 to 10 hours a day in a place. Like to give that much of my life away to something, money cannot be the only reason I'm there. And again, there's lovely people there, but if I was making half of what I was making or even 3/4 of it, I wouldn't have been there that long. So once I had that realization, I knew I was going to quit. I didn't know when. I stayed 1 more year. I stayed till, so that was 2022, January I decided. January 2023, I gave my notice. And I gave 3 months notice. So I said, I'm out at the end of March because I knew they were going to have to do some rearranging and restructuring with me leaving. But what was interesting is when I gave my notice, there was a lot of attempts to keep me. And this was really testing for me as well too, because they, I don't know if I should say this, but they offered just to give me my job back. They said, do you want to just go traveling for a few months and come back when you're done? Which prior to that, I wasn't able to leave the store for more than a week at a time. Like, I had 2 years of vacation for how long? I finally got 3 years of vacation, I think year 6. But again, I couldn't take 2 weeks at a time. I had to take 1 week here, 1 week here, 1 week here, just because of the way our flow in our department worked. It would have been too much on someone to work for 2 weeks straight because they were covering for me. So now they're telling me I could take months off and just come back when I wanted to. There was some incentives financially to talk about as well too. Like, they threw a few things at me. And again, because I had healed my burnout first and I was at the mountaintop, I was very confident in my decision, and no money or time or perks were going to change that. I was so confident and so grounded in my decision that when they offered these things, I was like, no. I even remember one day, the dealer principal of the dealership, he called me into his office, and he's not in there often. And he called me in and he goes, all right, be honest with me. I was like, yeah. He's like, are you going to want your job back eventually? And I was like, I don't think so. He's like, okay, I just needed to hear it from you. I need to hear it straight from you. I was like, yeah. And that was like, doesn't sound like a big conversation, but it was, because I know his demeanor. I know he's direct and he's serious, and he knows I am. We think we have mutual respect for each other in that regards. And so I just said, no, like, I'm not going to want it. And for the record, guys, I didn't know what I was going to do next. All I had planned was 2 months of traveling to Bali and Thailand. That's all I had planned. I didn't have this plan. I didn't know higher alignment was going to be a thing. I didn't know I was going to have a podcast. I didn't know any of this. I just knew that job was no longer for me, and there was something else on the horizon for me, and I didn't know what yet. If you're a high achiever, you probably feel the exhaustion that comes with always pushing and carrying the load. And here's the honest truth. Burnout doesn't fix itself by working harder or pushing more. You're not meant to just survive your success. You're someone who leads with impact and depth and intention, and you deserve to feel calm and connected while doing it. So imagine showing up present for your work and your personal relationships, feeling calm and grounded instead of constantly stretched. If that's what you want, this is exactly what we do in the Higher Alignment program. Book your assessment call through the link in the show notes, and let's get you back to balance and back to feeling like yourself again. Now, of course, the other part of it too is like the financial fear of it. Right? I was like, oh my God, like, what if I don't make this money again? Like, all these fears popped up. And so 2 things I did to remedy that was, one, that's why I took a whole year before I gave my notice, because I wanted to set myself up financially. You don't have to do that. That's just what I decided to do. So I banked that last year. But then also I had to keep telling myself that energy is a frequency. Energy is a frequency. And so if I could already attract that level of frequency once, I know I can do it again. That's my wholehearted belief. If I could do that once, I could do it again in some other way, shape, or form. Might take me a little bit longer, might have to take a different path to get there, but I didn't want to believe that was the peak. That wasn't the peak for Mintu, was that job, as great as it was. I wanted to believe that there was more for me out there. And again, I fully believe God, the universe, wants us to be even more abundant, okay? So I had to keep telling myself, you did it once, you can do it again. You did it once, can do it again. That's what I had to double down on in myself. And so then March 2023, I left. I went traveling, I took the year off, and then I decided to start Higher Alignment. Now, my point in sharing that story again is, if you're at that point where you're questioning, should I quit my job or not? Again, with every fiber of my being, my urge is for you to get back to baseline first. Make that decision from a regulated, grounded space. And it doesn't have to take you years like it did for me. Again, I teach people to do it in 90 days now, right? And there's tons of information out there. Whether you need a coach, hit me up, or you just want to go try and do the work on your own, that's fine. But I do recommend doing it with someone who knows what they're doing, because it'll make the process a lot smoother for you, and you'll probably get results faster, if I'm being honest. Not that it's about speed, but it's about efficiency. I know, if you're a high achiever, I know how your brain's wired. But again, it's being able to make that decision with clarity and with confidence. And, I think that most of us are playing it safe. If I'm being honest, I think most of us are. I think there aren't too many people in the world who feel like they're exactly where they're meant to be. And maybe that's sad. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But you got to take a bit of a leap of faith at times. But take that from a place where you feel grounded reassured in your decision, because what I will say is if you quit a job because you're burnt out, 9 times out of 10, that same pattern of burnout is going to just follow you to the next job. Might not take as long for it to show up, but the reason we burn out is because there is a lack of connection within us. There's a misalignment within us, and we don't know where that misalignment's coming from until we do this work of knowing how to reconnect with ourselves. So if you quit somewhere and then you just go to another job, move to another country, jump to another relationship without figuring out what that pattern is that burnt you out in the first place, again, it's just going to follow you again to the next one and the next one and the next one. And I don't want that for you. Okay. I don't want that for you. I want you to feel confident and grounded in whatever you're doing. And again, I feel so blessed that I took the time to heal my burnout first, because now, ironically, I'm a burnout coach, but also I have promised myself that I will not build this business the same way I built my last career. I will not burn myself out being the burnout coach. And I know that sounds like, okay, Mintu, of course you won't. I know some burnout coaches who are burnt out. I have talked to them. I have worked with some of them. Okay. And that's no judgment, because we all have our moments. I'm working with a nervous system coach right now because I could feel myself hitting a little bit of a peak with this season I'm in with the wedding and, and getting married and moving out to the country. I could feel myself hitting this capacity tap. And again, I did an episode on this a couple of weeks ago, which you guys can go back and listen to, where this was actually one of the slowest starts of the year financially for me. And again, it was all a nervous system thing. There was so many things going on. My nervous system felt like it needed to protect me. Now the gates are open and flowing again, and we're rocking and rolling, which is great. But again, you need to know how to work with this instrument that is so intelligent in your body, and it can either work for you or against you. When it's working against you, it doesn't mean that it's like, the ops, but it's going to protect you. And protection is the opposite of growth. When it's just trying to keep you safe all the time, you can't grow from that state. And most of us want growth. We want more. We want to have more. We want to be more in love, more abundant, etc. But you got to teach your nervous system to switch into that state to be able to do it. Okay. So again, if you're at that point where you feel like you have no options but to quit, I promise you do. I promise you do. But we got to get you back into a safe state. We got to get you back into a balanced state so that perspective can open. When you're dysregulated, you got blinders on. When you're regulated, those blinders come off and you start to see what the full picture is. Again, you get to the mountaintop. You see what's actually possible for you. And man, I'm so grateful for it because it's led me here. It's led me to you guys. It's led me to the business I'm building now, the life that I have now, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. This is the most aligned I've ever been in my life. And not to say that I still don't have more hard moments and I still don't get stressed. I do. But man, every move I make now is so intentional and so aligned that even when the stress happens, I'm able just to process it and dissect it way faster. And again, I'm not special. You can do this too. All it takes is just, again, when you feel like the only way to escape it is to remove yourself from the outside world, remember the most powerful place that you can go is within.